Welcome, Greater Heartland region or KW family or whoever might be joining us in today. We're continuing through Ignite, the skills that are going to spark your real estate career. And we're at session 18, the all important negotiating offers session, right? We can all build our skill sets in this. Glad to join you today. My name is Clark Kendall. I serve as a regional tech trainer for the Greater Heartland region, and I'm very, very overjoyed to be with fellows also MAPS coach, Jason Massengale. Jason, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason, love to allow the crew that's joining in today to learn a little bit about you.
Okay, yeah. So I'm on the Veris Network team here in Springfield, Missouri. My role in this team is the director of productivity. I'm over director of sales and the director of lead generation. Also a MAPS coach with MAPS coaching. So, yeah.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. So I'm really, really excited to bring the content today and your expertise in this. Yeah. Being in industry a while yourself, knowing the importance of negotiations, coaching agents to have more and powerful conversations to serve their clients well. That's what it's all about at the end of the day, to have our careers worth having here. But before we jump into the content, I always want to make mention here of whether you're joining us today, right? You're absorbing this content, and yet there's a guide to follow along with us. So if you go to ignite.ghregion.com, click on join in as a participant, there's going to be a PDF guide there. And so download that and follow along, but be aware that PDF guide is every single session. And there's 20 of them. We're in session 18. And so make sure that if you're tuning in session 18, you're going to be on page 18.1, so long as your PDF viewer is showing that there. But it'll be at the bottom of the page, at least for 18.1. That'll start us off on the same spot for this session. So make sure you have that. And as we go along, right there, you're either joining us live in the Market Center based on the schedule we rolled out for our 29 KW offices here in the Greater Heartland region. So welcome there, being amongst your peers and your facilitator there in the Market Center, or you're watching it on schedule live with us in the comfort of your own home or by yourself, or you're just watching this post beyond, into the future, beyond where we're talking now. And so you're joining, whatever the case is, we're glad you're here. Lean in as being a participant and asking what do you hope to learn from this. So that would be one thing before we get in the content, to think through what do you hope to get out of this session, right? In negotiating offers, serving your clients well, what do you presently not know, or what skill you maybe not are aware of that you hope to gain from this content today, right? So just take a moment to think about that as we transition over into our content. Bring over our slides here, make sure we're good. All right. So Jason, you ready to rock and roll? Ready to go on and start negotiating?
Yeah, let's do it. You ready?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So today, like you mentioned, like Harper just mentioned, we're going to talk about the negotiating offers. So up to this point on the transactions, we've talked about winning with buyers. We've talked about how to win with sellers. We've discussed working with buyers and sellers. And in our last session, we talked about making offers and receiving offers. And so today we're just going to go a little bit deeper into, now let's negotiate those offers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So today we're going to cover, like, what is negotiation? Like, what does negotiation mean? Maybe what are some thoughts around negotiation? We're going to talk about the 3 P's approach to negotiating. And we're going to talk about maybe some negotiating tips. And then we're going to recap it towards the end, and then of course we'll leave you to do the daily success systems.
Yeah, and I really like how they've structured this curriculum, Jason, because negotiations, especially as a new agent, man, I was really scared. Like, to be honest, coming from an educator world and then into sales, I never didn't feel like I had a sales bone in my body, but it was important. So out of the 3 P's, especially, is what I'm looking forward to. Like, we need simplicity in negotiations. So that system is going to be awesome.
I'll tell you, I'm really excited about the material that KWU has put together for us on this, because it really it explains it very well, and Leader Simplify. It just made it real simple. I love it. And I'd love for our goal today to really understand that framework for negotiating, so that we can, ultimately we can put more deals together. We can serve our clients at a higher level. We can have deeper relationships. So, yeah,
that's great, man. I'm ready.
So thanks for putting this quote up. I love this quote. Negotiating is not something to be avoided or feared. It's an everyday part of life. Clark, what do you think some limiting beliefs that someone might have around negotiating?
Yeah. Limiting beliefs would be that the other person, the other co-agent or the other person on the other end is better at it than I am, or that I haven't had enough negotiations or enough experience to negotiate well.
Yeah. Any other limiting beliefs you think might exist out there?
Yeah, for those of maybe us out there that might avoid conflict or that naturally aren't drawn to that it has to be going to blows, like putting on the gloves and may the best man or woman negotiator win. Some of us may not look forward to that.
You know, and I love that you just brought this up, because it's just like with anything else. This is a skill that when worked upon, like, you gain more confidence, right? It's kind of like if you went to the gym every day, you'd start to get more confidence going to the gym, right? And negotiating is the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. That
is. And you know, I'll share a couple of you know, maybe some guides to when thinking of negotiating. And I'm going to reference back to, you know, Mo Anderson, the Y4C2Ts. You know, and win or no deal, integrity, do the right thing. Yeah, that's fine. Step ahead of me. Integrity, do the right thing. Customers always come first. Commitment in all things. Communication, seek first understanding. Creativity, ideas before results. Teamwork, together everyone achieves more. Trust starts with honesty. So equity, success. Yeah, I mean, like, it really, this right here is the guide for negotiating. And, you know, two more things I might mention, you know, is when we start thinking about negotiating is, you know, keeping our emotions between the lines, you know, the bulldog, keep our emotions between the lines. You know, thinking that some of our clients, when negotiating, I mean, especially something this high price point, like, how many times in their life do they actually negotiate something at this high price point? So really just like helping us and them, like, control our emotions, and then last thing, maybe just show some grace, show a little grace. Keep you know, keep in mind, like, put ourselves in the other person's shoes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's good. To bring up this framework, right? It doesn't have to be. I mean, this is who we are, right? At Keller Williams, and it doesn't have to be what we fear, right? If these are kind of think about like the bumper lanes and bowling, right? These are our safeguards.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah, Clark, let me ask you this: what are some things that you've negotiated in life? What would be some things that maybe you've negotiated?
Oh man, it's every day, right? But if I'm thinking like, all right, if I go back and like I think about when I really wanted to enjoy negotiation, when I first got married, this might be silly, but I was listening to Dave Ramsey, the Financial Peace University. And he talked about, like, hey, what does it look like to lower your cost and to, of course, build, you know, start building that savings. And so there was a session in there that stuck with, like, hey, what's it look like to negotiate for anything that you're offering? So something that stood out in my mind, sounds really silly, but it was a point of pride once I was getting into that. I was like, you know what? We order pizza a lot. What would it look like just to call up Papa John's at the time and say, hey, what's the best deal you can get on me? Like, what's a large cost? And so they gave me the price, like, it's not going to work. Maybe can you give me a better price? And just thinking about that, like, I got a $6 pizza. Granted, that was 15 years ago, but I was like, yes, it works. So that was one that stuck in my mind. But yet, when I think about it, I mean, negotiations do really happen every day. I got 3 little ones, 8, 6, and 4 right now.
Yeah.
I'm getting beat down in negotiations every single day right now. So,
right.
Yeah.
I know. I was thinking about the same thing. And I can't tell you how many times I've had to negotiate with my kids to brush their teeth. So they're going to be so upset at me if they ever watch this, by the way. But,
right. Yeah.
But it's true, though. I mean, that's negotiation. Clean your room. So, yeah.
That's everywhere.
And also, I mean, thinking about big purchases, have you ever bought a car?
Yep, absolutely.
I mean,
Yep.
did you negotiate when you bought your car?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. The National Association of Realtors has a statistic that says the top reason that the general public hires a professional real estate agent to represent them in searching for houses and buying a house is actually for the negotiation part. The
Yeah.
top reason. Yeah. So since we're on this slide, let's just talk. Like, what do you think? And in all fair, I'm going to give you the definition. But what do you think of when you think of the definition of negotiating?
Yeah, allow other folks to think about that. I mean, being at Keller now so long, I guess it's top of the Y4C2Ts, right? I mean, negotiation. Where's the win? Where's the compromise? Possibly.
Mm-hmm.
Where do both parties or all parties involved find an acceptable result?
Yeah. So, if we just look at like the definition, like what is negotiating? I mean, it's really just like the process for bargaining between two or more people with maybe like the seeking to understand the needs, their perspective, and trying to find some like common ground. Like just putting it real simply, it's just the process.
Hmm.
So what are your thoughts when you hear it that way? When you hear it's just the process?
I mean, if it's a process, I'm sure there's certain stages or certain components that are ideal to walk through a successful negotiation. So, I mean, being a Keller, I learned to think through like there's a model to success. What are the must-haves in that model or best practices of it?
Yeah. But you're right. Which actually, in a little bit later, we're actually going to talk about the three P's: the prepare, the present, and the position. So being the three P's approach. So we're going to talk about that in detail in a little bit. Um, and in putting this in a perspective of like a framework, so negotiation is the process. These Y4C2Ts are actually the foundation inside of this process. That's what I love about this.
Mm.
And I don't know if it was intentional, not intentional. However, Gary and Mo came up with this. It's amazing because it really does. And like every negotiation, this really is the foundation for it. I don't know if you ever thought about that.
Yeah.
So awesome. Let's move on to the next slide. Oh, I love this. So really, whenever we're negotiating, we have two options. So either the first scenario, you make an offer, it gets accepted, it moves on. That's amazing. And option two being like you make an offer, it either gets rejected or countered. And then this space right here in the middle. So this circle, if you look at this, this is really that framework of the process. I love just think of it in that way. Like this is just the process. And looking at just this picture, to go from counter to accepted, you have to go through the process.
Hmm.
And then take it a step further. Like I also love that it's a circle. I mean, that's intentional, and I'm sure it's how it's put in a circle because it might not happen the first conversation, and it might not happen the second conversation. It might be something that takes a little bit put together, and this is just the framework inside of putting it all together.
Yeah, yeah. It's just I think something comes to mind there, like the circle for each transaction is going to look different, right? Like the win-win that you came through with the previous deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the conversations, the win-win's going to be different. So that circle is going to take a different shape every single time. And
That's true.
and probably could look at that two ways. One as something to be feared, right? But I'd push against that. Like we have an opportunity to get curious and to learn every single time. And this is what makes real estate so exciting, right? There's something every single day, every single transaction we get to learn. And how do we lean into that curiosity mode of, hey, how can I show up? What process can I go through, even though the end result might look different from previous one, right? What framework can I find out but learn something different?
And I love thinking of this in the terms of this being the framework, and inside the framework are the Y4C2Ts. Like seek first to understand,
Mm-hmm.
win-win or no deal. Like it just trust starts with honesty. Like I just all of it fits right inside of that framework, which I love.
Yeah.
So awesome. Let's move on to the next slide.
All right.
So this is interesting. Clark, how many negotiations do you have inside of a negotiation to put a contract together?
How many negotiations do we have on both sides? I mean, I would think it'd be, depending on, I guess, the points of contention or maybe offers. I don't know, but I mean, I guess there's typically two folks that are thinking that through, right? There's two sides of the party, but there's also two people representing those parties. So I don't know.
So it's interesting thought, though, right? You've got a negotiation with your client, and you've got a negotiation with the agent.
Yeah.
And keeping in mind, like you can't negotiate with the agent until you understand with your client, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think it means to negotiate with your client? Like when you hear that, like, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, again, seeing it as how I'm serving, we've talked so much about this. It's all about serving the client and knowing what they want and how we can help them get there. Negotiations for me is understanding what that motivation is, what that ideal outcome is, and helping them see strategies, tactics to in the conversations with the seller or the other side of the transaction, right? Of how to get them to that point, right? To touch on that motivation. By doing this is possibly our best opportunity and getting you where you want to go.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I love to just take it back to the definition of negotiating. Inside the definition, it actually says to seek to understand the other person's needs, their perspective on it. Like just in going right back to the definition, just keep it simple.
Yeah.
We can't represent our clients till we understand their needs and their perspective, right?
Right. Yeah, it's going to be really hard to negotiate with your client if you haven't revisited that motivation, haven't dug deep, right? It's gonna make it harder.
And staying on the slide for a minute, I'll tell you I've been in real estate about 18 years, and it's fairly early in my career. So I was probably been licensed maybe a year or two at this time, and I had a client. Her husband had passed away. She was moving back to the area, be close to family. She was downsized to a smaller house, and I'm going to share a story with you that was kind of my learning moment, and like at the time I say I'll never do it again type moment. I'd love to say I knew all these things we're talking about. I'd love to say back then I knew these things and I didn't. But we went to make an offer on a house, and I wrote the contract, and we were in a different market back then, and we made a below asking offer, and I sent it to the agent. I didn't call the agent. I just sent it to the agent, and the agent waited. I mean, I think our expiration was at 5:00 the next day. At 4:45 the next day, like almost to the deadline, he sends it back to me at full price. And my client was upset. It wasn't what they were expecting. And honestly, like remembering back, like what it was like, she was devastated when her husband passed away. It was hard for her.
Yeah.
Like, this was a really tough situation. And I think in retrospect, now I still put the deal together, yet like I think I made it harder because I didn't call the other agent. I didn't ask more questions. I could have set different expectations. Yeah, I got the deal done, and yet, I think if ultimately the goal is to serve them, I think I could have served them a little bit better. And ever since then, I'll tell you, that was probably a year or two after I've been in the business. I always call the other agent. Like I have these things that I always do because I remember. I can tell you her name. I still talk to her today, even. Like it's just one of those things. I just never forgot how it made her feel. And it was like my moment of like, okay, this is really important how I approach it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's key. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and Jason, what I heard out in there as well is being early on in your career, right? You didn't have it mastered, and that's okay, right? I mean, would be fair to say even out of all the experience and learning some of these pieces, is it still mastered for you in negotiations?
No.
Right.
No.
Yeah. So it's a journey for every single one of us, and how we show up and being willing to lean into that discomfort, lean into that uncertainty, be okay with possibly making a mistake or not doing it perfectly, and learning faster in it.
That's right. Which, in all honesty, anything you start new, you're not going to do it perfect every time.
Nope. No way.
So yeah, it was an important, honestly, it was an important moment for me in my career. So you know what? It's bigger than that. It was an important moment for me in in my relationship with people. So it was.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'm sure what came across in that, right, is who you are. That authenticity came out, like your care and concern and really being in the transaction or that end result with the client, right? Beyond any mistakes, how you show up in your authentic self and care will outshine, right, any possible, imperfect process of negotiation.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So the two parts when you are negotiating, if you move to the next slide, we'll keep moving.
Yeah.
So the 2 points in a negotiation would be price and terms. Price obviously it's the primary factor. It's what does property cost? Terms being like either financial or time-based, things like that. Clark, if we were just you and I brainstorming, what would be some questions you could ask? Let's say you're representing the buyer. What would be some questions you could ask the other agent in regards to price before you make an offer?
Oh goodness. Why first right off the bat, if they're anticipating any other offers, I mean that's case in point. I think it's a necessity in this market for sure.
Okay.
That'll be a quick gauge of your approach in conversations and informing your client for sure. And I think a great question. I mean, if things aren't as hurried, sometimes, I mean, we're going to see that in the coming months that things aren't as hurried, assuming that inventory does rise. Thinking through is like just, I think it's 100%. I've received this myself. I've asked the question as well. Hey, in going through this on the price, I'm thinking through a discrepancy, right? Like if I feel a home is possibly overpriced, right? How do I approach that agent on that? So one, having the conversation with the other agent on the other side is important. But your buyers might be aware as well. So if they're seeing like a home is overpriced, they want to go super under, right? There's absolutely others like, hey, totally understand that. I tell you what, I could actually inquire with the agent and help them understand their pricing to better inform my client and seeing what the other agent provides.
Yeah.
What's the thought?
So let me ask you this. Could you ask the other agent how motivated they are?
Absolutely.
Could you ask them if they've received any offers?
Yep. Love that.
Just some thoughts. What are some questions you might be able to ask them around terms?
Oh goodness. Yeah, I mean, it may be related to that motivation, but yeah, what's an ideal closing date?
Yeah.
Again, if there's multiple offers, generally like what would be an ideal earnest money if there's flexibility for your buyers on that. Yeah, I mean, any way to make the offer more attractive and just simply asking, hey, as I write this out, what else is important to your client in this transaction? Just open ended.
Love that question. Yeah. Love that question. Yeah.
It sounds really, really simple and might come up. There's really, really good power and really good skill in just being confident enough at asking that question. It might come across as, well, that sounds like a dumb question. Like, that's all it is. No, just open-ended there and having the confidence in receiving and being quiet and hearing from the other agent. Some good stuff can come from that.
And I also, and as we're talking about this, I think the relationship you build with the other agent by simply being willing to just call and have the conversation before bringing them an offer is so valuable. Do you agree with that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, it is. Yeah, it's vital. Yeah, be on a long journey together. You don't want to start off on the wrong foot.
Yeah, awesome. So Clark, I think we're about through the first section of this on really defining what negotiation is.
Mm-hmm.
What would be and kind of what that framework looks like and the mindset around negotiating and the definition? What might be some takeaways that you think you might have or someone might have with this first section?
Yeah, definitely. For those joining in, pause to think about what really stood out in the last few slides here. And for me, yeah, taking a pause and when I hear the word negotiations, reflecting on what vibe I get from that. What feelings do I get excited about the opportunity to really understand my client and understand the other side to find a solution,
Mm-hmm.
or am I kind of fearful for whatever reason? And if I have a fear or some other myth understanding around that, how can I correct that? How can I have the right thinking, the correct thinking, the truth around it, and revisit that, like whether it's at a point in the transaction where there's a good reminder, like an affirmation. Hey, I have the opportunity to serve my client at a higher level by being curious about the other side, whatever it is. Right. Um, yeah, that would be mine. What am I currently feeling about negotiations, and how can I really understand how it's going to serve my clients well, and B, how can I be excited about that?
Yeah, I love that. I love you went to the mindset around negotiation. I love that perspective on it.
Yeah.
I think, when I look back at this very first section, I really like the simplicity of, or the visualization, I guess, of putting the framework together around what negotiation is. Like, to me, I love visuals, and my mind goes to, what does this look like? So I love the visual, the framework of, this is what negotiation is.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can start talking about like the approach or the process, inside of that. So I love that part of it.
Yeah, it brings clarity to it, right?
It does. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I love that. All right. So this next section, we're going to go over the three P's of negotiation. The three P's being the approach to negotiation. Um, so first being prepare, present, and position. So preparation is the key building of the confidence and ensuring a smooth negotiation process. So, and we're going to go into a little bit more detail in a minute on what's involved in the prepare. The present, it's simply, moving into the negotiation process. So I'm starting to present the negotiation, and we're entering into it with all parties.
Mm.
Position, I mean, honestly, just being real simple about it, positioning is just how do we put ourselves in a position to have a win-win. So, and getting closer to that agreement. So, is really the positioning part.
Love it.
So, prepare. I love this part of it, and I love it because of the detail around it. So, you've got to know the goal. And in preparing to present an offer, you have to know what the ultimate goal is. I love, when I study leadership and such, I always love to study sports and military. Like, military seems to have some of the best leadership inside of it. And military has a saying, the mission comes first. Like, everybody knows what the goal is, right? Like, we've talked about it. We know the mission's going to come first. Like, what's the goal for the client? Do we know ultimately what they want at the end of this? And then knowing the client themselves, have we had a deep enough conversation to know about them, know about their family, know about their future, and things like that.
Mm.
Um, Thinking ahead, like, are we anticipating? Are we anticipating things that might come up that might be a problem in the future? Are we anticipating maybe how the other agent might respond to our offer, or what the seller might think about it? Like, are we thinking, what will we do if they counter at this? Or are we thinking a little bit further ahead down the road to see if we can head it off before we get there? And then the next part, which leads right into it, would be setting clear expectations. Um, there's a really great agent in Springfield Market Center, Adam Grady. I've heard Adam say this several times, and he says, "We're in the expectation management business." The level of your relationship is based on the expectations you set around it. It's so interesting. Like, and think about, like, in the expectation conversation. Remember, I told you my story from the client I worked with. Like, if I had shared with her, like, the expectations around our offer being lower, and maybe finding more information out to know where the seller might anticipating where they might respond, and setting the expectations this could happen, she might not have been so dead set, like, my thinking that her offer was going to get accepted. Um,
Mhm.
I mean, I reflect back, like, I could have done a lot of different things to set different expectations. Um, and even, like, think about, like, when you talk to the other agent, like, are you setting expectations? I'm going to be sending you an offer. Here's when I'm going to be sending it. Receiving it, like, setting the expectations. When will you be responding to the offer?
Mm.
What do you think? Clark, what do you think happens when you set expectations?
I think it clears the air a little bit, right? I mean, it's beginning communication. I think it addresses any assumptions on that receiving end. It brings them up to the surface. Right? So if you have an expectation, you communicate it, and if it's out of alignment with any other assumption, you'll be able to gain insight. Right? So I mean, if it's a buyer that all of a sudden, like the months of inventory has doubled, but we're still at like 2%, 2 months of inventory, and they feel like the world's opened up to them, so they make an underbid. That still is possibly not the case, right? So, going into that expectation of still with what the market is doing, right, and as a best advisor, how do you buffer that expectation that the client might have? But it's a feeler, right? I mean, if you're setting expectation, then allowing them to respond, you'll quickly know where they're coming from.
How do you think it makes the client feel when you ask questions to know their goal and you set clear expectations?
Yeah, valued for sure, heard, trusting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Value, heard, and trusting. Those are big words. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last three: be informed, obey the laws, and obviously know your document inside and out. I mean, know it inside and out. Be able to quote the line and say, "Here's what it says here." I mean, to some extent, our clients expect it from us, right?
Right.
So, what do you think, Clark, would be some questions we could ask our clients to either get to know their goal or get to know them or set expectations? What would be some questions we might be able to ask?
Yeah, and we've alluded to this in some previous sessions, right? It does begin with that needs analysis,
Yeah.
right? What are they simply looking to accomplish, but going deep in that as well, right? I mean, if I'm asking a buyer, right, or if I'm working with a client that wants to buy an investment property for short-term rental, right, Airbnb, okay, there could be a lot of reasons why that is. If I just stop there, it's like, hey, you want to buy an Airbnb? Okay, we'll go find the houses. I'll go start sending stuff. Let's go. Well, no, pause and think. Okay, awesome. What does this short-term rental? What does that ultimately do for you? Right? What are you hoping that gains for you? Hearing that, and then asking that question again. Ultimately, okay, well, what does that do for you or others in your world? Right. So the more deeper we can go, then we're going to get really, really clear on what that goal is, and maybe even allow them to uncover something they hadn't thought about before and get energized by it.
Yeah, and you know what? I've always thought for myself that my role is really to help them gain clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't sell them anything. I just help them gain clarity on what's right for them and their family.
Mm-hmm.
I had this one client one time. I was going through this, and I'm just asking questions. Really, honestly, I just wanted to get to know them and really understand what was behind their decision. And I had them literally just stop and said, "Wow, like most people just don't ask that many questions."
Right. We want to, yeah. Telling's not selling, and it's in its truest form.
Yeah, very true. So asking the right question. So when you ask the right question, it provides you with the points that you're going to negotiate on. It provides insights on where your clients might have leverage. It sets the right expectations. Kind of we talked about this and allows you to get to know your client and their goals. Helps you learn what will make a win-win negotiation. Like honestly, without asking the right questions or powerful questions, it's hard to know any of those things. So opening questions and closing questions. Clark, are you okay if we maybe role play for just a minute?
Yeah, let's do it. Always up for that.
Awesome. So, Clark, if you wouldn't care, just you play the buyer for a minute.
Okay.
Okay. Clark, in a perfect world, when would you like to be moved into your house?
By September 15th.
September 15th.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So, how big of a house are you looking for?
We're looking for 4-bedroom and minimum 3 baths. 4 baths would be even better.
Okay, 4-bedroom, 3 baths.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need a big backyard, a small backyard?
That's not necessarily too important. I mean, yeah, probably small backyard.
Okay, so I'm going to stop the role play for a minute. If it's okay, I want to start over.
Mhm.
Okay. So Clark, in a perfect world, when would you like to be moved into your new home?
September 15th.
September 15th. What's important to you about September 15th?
Ah, well, I kind of made a promise myself that we would have a vacation home by June 15th. And so if conversations with my bride and our investment, we want to make sure we're at least a quarter away from achieving that. So that's our new goal is September 15th. A little behind, but that's our new date.
What in your life will be impacted or changed by accomplishing this and having it by September 15th?
Oh, well, yeah, one, we would begin to um, understand the market. Yeah, it's granted a vacation home, but also for a short-term rental.
Hmm.
We would actually want to visit that home ourselves once it starts getting just on the cusp of being cooler here in St. Louis to have a little getaway in warmer weather.
I love that. How will it feel when you and your wife are able to visit that?
Feel like sunshine and sand, man. It'd be awesome. Yeah, it would be a lot of fulfillment and meaningful experiences for us, for sure.
That's awesome. So thank you for role playing with me, Clark. We'll stop the role play. So what was the difference in those two role plays?
Oh man, it was night and day difference. I mean, um, I had an energy around it. I was visualizing what that outcome is. Um, yeah, I had an energy around it.
I love that.
Much more so.
So the first role play, I went into it with just asking closed-ended questions. So every question I asked you had a yes or no, or it had a specific response to it. It's just like a one-word response. And the second role play was an open-ended questions. So every question I asked you, except for that very first one, was open-ended.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so Jason, on your receiving end of that, I mean, for one question that comes to mind here, how much harder was it for you on your question asking end?
Well, the first role play we did, I was struggling with what was I going to ask and where was I going to go.
Uh-huh.
And the second role play, when I was asking open-ended questions, was easy because you were doing most of the talking.
Right.
You did the heavy lifting, not me.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So let me ask you this: when would be a time in the conversation that you might ask closing-ended questions? How about that?
Yeah. Close-ended questions. One to assert a point. I think. I mean, to make it really point if it is in that motivation. I mean, thinking through if you've had a conversation around maybe making an offer that'd be underpriced, right, and sharing your concern as an agent, right? Here's my concern in that if we come underpriced, right, they might be offended by the offer, might not even consider any counter offers after that. And if we begin on that foot, do you think that would go well for our negotiations moving forward? Something like that could possibly be. That's what comes to mind right now. I might have to crunch on that a little bit more. Yet offer any assistance, and yeah.
I hear you, like on the tie down situation. Is that kind of what you're referencing?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it might say like maybe a fact finding, like we do actually need to know like what size of house they're looking for. We probably do need to know the price point. Like there might be some questions we might need to ask. I did need to ask in the beginning, like in a perfect world, when would you want to be moved in, or when would you want to purchase? What about the open ended? Like when's appropriate for open ended?
Yeah. Open ended when you see the opportunity or the need to offer a possible change in thinking that needs to occur. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Change in thinking. Yeah, you're right. And you and I didn't discuss this prior to, so I really just put you on the spot there.
That was funny. I'm all for it, man. This is good.
And it kind of is. I mean, I think you can. I think the open-ended questions really just gets them to think and feel and gain clarity. So yeah, awesome. Thank you for being willing to role play with me a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it was real play. We're on the hunt.
Is it a real play?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, September 15th is a real date.
It's a real date.
Yeah.
Wasn't made up.
For
Awesome. So let's move on to the next slide. Let's stay in this, this one. So let's stay in this conversation. So I love the what and the why questions. So what would happen if, and why is this important to you? So go back to this role play, and so actually, Clark, like,
Mhm.
what would happen if you don't have this house by September 15th, the condo?
Yeah. For us, I mean, reliving more regret that I felt in the past 2 years because, thinking about what prices were and rates were 2 years ago and the missed opportunity, the appreciation that's happened in that area, missed out. So if it hasn't happened then it's kind of twisting that knife more of, okay, how much more opportunity have you missed? It's not a good feeling.
Yeah. So, and I'm breaking the role play here. So in that role play, the what would happen if, what did you feel when I asked that?
Yeah, it took me to a pain spot. It took me a point of pain that I really would desire to avoid.
Yeah, and also gets you to think through. Like, I think it gets the client to think through, like, what is the next step going to be, and maybe determine. You use the word pain point, and I agree with you. I might also say it kind of helps get clarity, like how important it is too,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
because it sounds important to you. And I might go on the other side of that. Someone else might have said, "I would be okay."
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It just kind of helps get clarity on, like, the importance of the time frame and maybe what's the next step going to look like when we get there.
Yeah.
Now, the why it's important to you, I think we covered that a little bit. What do you think that really helps uncover or get to?
Yeah. Again, that motivation, right? Which is gonna, again, in hearing this, like, this is gonna be such a key point as we're shifting the markets, right? We're gonna see buyers that are, and again, who knows if you're watching this 2 years from now, it'd be fascinating to see how these questions show up. But yeah, I mean, in the what and why here, I mean, it's if they are okay, well, why is not making a move in here? Why is that important? It really is going to get to the motivation. We're going to have to find more and more people that are really truly motivated and spurred on. Um, being keenly aware through not just an initial needs analysis, but through every part until you get to close. I mean, you've got to really reassess that motivation level. It's going to be really, really important.
I think what you said is so true. And even I think especially actually in a shifting market, it's even more important to really just always be checking back in with that motivation. Make sure nothing changes. Help remind them. So important.
Yeah. Oh, it's going to be. Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's move on to the next slide. So in this part of the session is so if you're watching it in the market center, if you're watching it at home, so this is honestly, this is one of the most important parts of the process. It's when we take what we're learning and we take a minute and we start to apply it. So we're going to separate with partners. You're going to read the scenario that's in your book, and you're going to list like clarifying questions to ask your client, and apply for new knowledge that you've been working with on open-ended questions, closed-ended questions. And think about this. I love to think of it from the perspective that this is our opportunity to practice before we're actually in the game. Like, we look at the professional ball players and they take these moments and they practice and they give everything they have in that moment so that they can perform at the highest level. And this is kind of our opportunity to do that. So this, in my mind, would be one of the most important aspects of the whole class.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And for those y'all again who are follow along in the guide here, this activity, this is on 18.6. So in this scenario, you're going to it's one representing a single buyer. Right. So this activity is on 18.6. And so just want to make sure we're following along with the guide there. And we'll be right. I think 10 minutes is what we got allotted here. So we'll come back in 10.
Well, welcome back. I trust that was a productive exercise, and you learned a little bit with implementing some new skills. And Clark, you ready to keep going?
Yeah, let's roll. This is good
Awesome.
stuff.
All right, so we just went over some of the prepare and present, and so we're going to talk a little bit about best practices when presenting.
Mhm.
So presenting simply is just I'm presenting the offer, so I'm engaging in the actual negotiation itself. So best practices is call the agent. I told you my story where I didn't do it, and it was a really big deal for the impact it had on my client. And it's always good, the relationship you have with the agent. And one of my mentors at Maps Coaching, uh, I love how she used to put it. She'd say, whenever you're negotiating, put yourself on the same side of the table as them, and whatever the obstacle is, put it on the other side.
Mhm.
And and so put yourself on the same side as the agent. We're both here to find a win-win for our clients. Like we're on the same side of the table here. We're working together.
Mm.
Um, you know, pay attention when you're calling the agent. Pay attention to the nonverbal cues, like the pauses, the voice quality, like what's changing in those. Um, keep quiet once you present the offer. See what the response is. That's hard.
Mhm.
Listen carefully to what's important to the other party. Like we talked about before, calling them up and saying, "Hey, what is important to your client other than the price? Like, what are they looking for?" Stay calm and relax. Focus on the customer's needs, and really just all that just gives your offer the best chance possible. So,
Yeah, Jason, one little tip. The hardest one, yeah, is probably that keeping quiet and presenting an offer. One little tip while we're calling the agent, right? As you're presenting the offer, hit the mute button, like force like hit the mute button where even you're like, oh, I want to say something, like you have to physically hit that unmute button to say it. Right? That's a good way.
100%. Yeah, that's a great suggestion.
Yep.
I've done that before. So,
It's a good little hack.
yeah, awesome. And remember, our goal is really to find a win-win. Go back to the Y4C2Ts. Like
Yeah.
our goal is to find a win-win. Our client has expressed this is the house they want. We've talked to our clients deep enough to know what's the right offer for them, and we're going into it to find a win-win. So,
Yeah. Well, and in that, I mean, because in the win-win, going back to that, this doesn't have to feel like a struggle, right? It's how you show up in that moment. So, I mean, for the instance, like keeping quiet, I'm focusing on that one best practice out of these, all that are important, right? It's not about a matter of struggle, right? You can look at it as a struggle and who's going to win, or you could say, be comfortable and confident of being curious of how what you're going to receive on that other end is going to get the deal done, possibly. Right? It doesn't have to be a struggle. It's either okay. Am I focusing on this being a fighting approach or a curiosity approach? Two totally different energies and confidence around it.
Clark, I'm sure you have too. Well, let me ask you this: Have you ever won the bid on a multiple offer situation because the other client said they really wanted to work with you?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Have you ever won the bid on, so like you wrote an offer for a buyer and it was a multiple offer situation? Have you ever won it because the agent said they wanted to work with you? They knew your quality and professionalism?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Yep.
I know. And as a new agent, I wouldn't have ever thought that. And it's so true, right? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've even shared that with sellers. I mean, sellers that I'm working with of, hey, all things being equal, here's the vibe I'm getting from the parties on the other side. Like generally speaking, like it's a different type of cooperation that the agent is presenting. Right? It's an intangible. It's not measurable in a document, but this is just what you're. That's important to share.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Keep moving.
All right.
All right. And so whenever, so actually this is interesting. So acknowledge and affirm a common ground. What do you think that means, affirm?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's highlighting, it's celebrating. Right, I was just pointing out that awareness that there's a win there, that there's a spot that to stand on.
When I read this, I thought that was really great. So thinking in the positioning, so we're in positioning now. So acknowledge where it's at, right? We're going to acknowledge what the common ground is. So it maybe the common ground is price, and maybe it's terms that we're still discussing.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, Clark, that's great. This is awesome. It looks like we're already in agreement on price.
Mm-hmm.
Now we just need to discuss the terms and come to find some common ground there.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So also thinking like, small steps to that end result, like small wins to get to the bigger win. Like we've already won on this.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
I looked at that word affirm and I'm like, okay, affirmation, and affirmation on the acknowledgement of it. I thought that was genius. I love it.
Yeah.
So ask what and how questions. Man, there's so much to this one statement right here. And Clark, I'm going to leave it up. And if you know, I'd love to hear it. And if you don't, that's okay too. Like when you ask a what question, do you know what it elicits compared to what a how question elicits?
Yeah, I think. Well, that's a good question on questions. I think what gets more tangible, right? Like specifics on the details there, and how is more of an approach.
So it's interesting. I was talking to MAPS coach Misty Harrington, and she was telling. So she's the one that told me this, so I didn't come up with it on my own. And she said that the what is more of a logical answer, and the how is an emotional answer. How do you feel about that, or what do you feel? The what identifies it, and then the how describes your emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was interesting. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I can feel that. I think you just asked like, how do I see that? Like, and for me, it feels more powerful. And so that you and ask me, how do I approach that? Yeah, it's evident that the how does definitely elicit an emotional response.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And then know that positioning is a process. So you mentioned that earlier, that it's the small little wins in the process. Negotiating, we said in the very beginning, negotiating is a process. It's a process of bargaining. So and remember that picture towards the beginning of the slide, and it showed a circle. So just remembering it's a process. It might not happen on the first conversation, might not happen on the second. You might have to keep it going. And as long as we keep our emotions between the lines, remember that what the client's goal is, what mission comes first. Like it's a process to get there. So, and then I love the fourth one: know when to walk away. It's win-win or no deal. Like win-win or no deal. Don't be attached to the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
So either works for our clients or it doesn't. So
yeah, that's a good piece there. I mean, either the other side is really willing and they're motivated to make this happen, or it doesn't. You can only control what you can control.
That's right. And we're there for our clients' best interest, so not ours.
Right.
Yeah. Awesome. So in this next section, you're going to work with that same partner as you did before, and you're going to read the scenario that's in your book, and you're going to complete the role play. And like we said before, this is our opportunity to implement what we're learning, and let's do it in a safe environment. So where it's okay to fail, it's okay to try things.
Yeah, and just so those of y'all follow or have downloaded that guide, it's on 18.8. And so there's a scenario for someone to be a buyer's agent, somebody a listing agent, right? So that's the activity that we're speaking of there. So
awesome.
Yeah. So we'll take 10 minutes and for that, so 10 minutes, right? And if you have time, you feel like you're speeding through it, like switch roles at 5 minutes, see if you can do that, or just give the other person the opportunity to be able to respond there. We'll be back in 10.
So welcome back. I trust that that you got a lot out of that exercise and you learned a little bit more from implementing the knowledge that you've just been learning over this class. And Clark, are you ready to get going?
Yeah, we're almost done here.
All right. Negotiating tips. So uh, kind of putting this together a little bit. So obviously be professional. Um, we're all working towards the same goal. Like I said before, put yourself on the same side of the table as who you're working with, and keep the goal in mind. Mission comes first. Clients are counting on us to keep the goal in mind. Pay attention to your communication and your tone with anyone involved in the transaction. So, want to be really aware of how we're coming across, and sometimes that might take putting ourselves in the other person's shoes just to see how would they receive it. How would we receive it?
Mm-hmm.
Continually refer to your client's motivation when speaking with them. This just kind of really, I think, especially in a shifting market, this is so important because, as we mentioned before, they might only transact. The average person is probably only buying a house and selling a house a handful of times in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it could be a little bit stressful for them. It could cause a lot of emotion. So it really is up to us to really bring them back to what was our intentions with doing this? Like, why is this important to us?
Mm-hmm.
Not because we want to talk them into anything. It's our intention that we want to make sure they have clarity on really what's important to them and focus on that. Um, and then don't reveal too much. Like, I mean, we've got to, unless they give us approval, what to say. Like, we want to keep our clients' motivation close to our chest. We're working for them, and in all honesty, when you ask powerful questions and great questions, it's pretty easy to keep your client's motivation to you. Um, by just asking more questions. And then, as I said before, don't be attached to the outcome. Um, it's the client's goal, it's not ours, and it's whatever works best for them. And if it's a win-win for them and the sellers and us involved, then great. And if it's not, they'll be willing to walk away.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good wrap, and it's a couple of things come also to mind here, Jason. One, don't be attached to the outcome. You might find yourself really struggling against that one, especially if you're beginning your career, right? Or if you felt like you've kind of hit a ceiling and you want more business and need more business. This is your primary income, right? Like there's a lot of fears that quickly creep up. Like, what if I don't have what it takes? Right. So being attached to that outcome is understand that it could naturally be more of a temptation to be attached to it if you have to have this deal closed.
Yeah.
Right. So a great prescription, you want a secret. Well, hopefully it's no secret. It's not a secret going through Ignite. Right. The way you alleviate being attached to the outcome is having a lot of folks that you get to help, right? More people. Right. Now, we've said it before, lead generation cures all, right? The more people you find that need help, all of a sudden, because you feel good and comfortable where your business is going, you get to be a little bit less detached, right? You get to bring more focus off of what you have to have happen for your own income, and it's solved through lead gen. So I know it has. I know we're not talking anything specific about lead gen in this, but I just kind of stood out. Like this is why we Ignite. We don't just present this content. Like here in a bit, you're going to have a chance of lead gen together in your market center. Um, it's a great solution not to be less attached to the outcome.
Yeah, great point. Great point, Clark.
Yeah.
All right, so next slide.
Yeah, we are wrapped up.
Aha.
Yeah, actually, the final aha is here.
Final aha. All right. So we said in the beginning that our goal was to really understand the framework of negotiating and definitions of it. And we said by knowing that would help us to maybe put more deals together and help serve our clients at a higher level and really maybe develop relationships deeper. Do you think we accomplished that today, Clark?
I know I gained from it. Yeah, so I feel like we checked those boxes. Yeah, this has been good for me.
Awesome. What were some takeaways you might have from this? We going through the beginning where we gave a definition and a framework. We went into some of the approaches: prepare, present, position.
Yeah, I mean, again, it all begins with where you show up, where you enter in this space of negotiation. So checking your mindset, and yet also through, even though we don't get to observe the practice that happened there, like that's so important in order for you to feel comfortable and to build confidence in that. I don't stop the practice here. Right? This is a routine thing, and then you're on that unending journey of developing your skill in it. So I trust that got a little uncomfortable in that. Well, the next time it's going to get easier. Even the next time you practice, it's going to be easier to where you don't even think twice about it. You're starting to develop that mastery, and you go into that kind of unconscious competence of that we speak about as coaches, right? It's a skill that you get to. So yeah, don't practice on the agent that you have to call when the deal matters. Practice on your peers and colleagues there.
Clark, what would be one thing that you would hope that people listening to this would not hope that you would trust that people listening to this would walk away with? What's one thing that you think would be the most important thing for them to walk away with to hearing?
Yeah. That as an agent, right, you've gotten to this point in your career that this is a get to and not a have to, right? This is a space you can enter in confidence and how you're designed, right? However much of a dominant personality or a serving personality you feel like you have a structure in place now and tactics to use. You're the right person for it, right? And be authentic in that, follow this process and again, practice.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. Jason, how about you though?
How about me?
Reverse that. Yeah. Out of all this, negotiations, what stands out to you and you hope people take away from it?
I would say understanding. I think to me, when I look at this section, I think just the simple definition of the negotiation really laid a framework for the process to me, because knowing that it's going to be a process, and I framed it with, the questions. I guess just it's making it simple for me would be the one thing that I would hope people to walk away with is just if you ask questions, if you approach every conversation with questions, whether it be to your client or to the other agent, and then even when you think you've asked enough questions, maybe go one or two more. It just makes the whole experience better for everybody.
Yeah. I was on the receiving end of that today. Yeah. So it's proof in the pudding there. That's awesome. Cool. Well, Jason, I'm going to go ahead and transition over for those market centers that are going live, right? We have the opportunity to jump into role play for generating leads to find new business. And of course, do that lead generation together, right? Add those 10 to having 10 real estate conversations, 10 added to the database, 10 notes that are written in the daily social media 10-5-1. Right. So step into that role. Facilitators go ahead and take that over once we're done. But yet, Jason, thank you so much. For bringing that deliberate thought and good questions within this content. I know I'm better for it. And I know if people leaned into this and heard and participated, they did as well. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Clark, for the opportunity. And thank you for everybody that's listening to this participating. Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. See y'all next time.